I'm just going to adjust this because I'm kind of short, but, it'll be fine. All right, how is everybody doing tonight? All right, that's a little weak, but I'll take it because it's like post-Thanksgiving, and we're probably all still in like food comas or something like that, so I'll accept it. I'm super, super excited that you guys are here. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Katie, and maybe we've never met. Hi, Colby. Or maybe you're like me and you have a terrible habit of just remembering people's names. So if you're in the second boat, I'm giving you a total freebie, and you can thank me later for that one. So currently, we are in a 3-week series called Inside Out. And the whole idea of this series is to discuss that the power to change the world and make a difference in our world comes from inside each and every one of us. In the first week, Abby, she shared us her personal testimony, which was really, really cool. I personally enjoyed getting to know her in that way and in just a new level. And so she shared with us her testimony, and the point that she stressed is that if we choose Jesus for our own lives, then he'll change our lives from the inside out. And last week we heard from Steve, and he started us off on this idea that what you believe determines your actions. And so I want to go off of that tonight, and I want to ask you guys a question. What do you believe, and do your actions match those beliefs? Because at the end of the day, no one gets to determine what you believe except for you. But what you believe determines how you act, which influences everyone around you. So I ask this question because what we believe on the inside determines what we do on the outside. For some of you guys, this applies to how you view your community, whether it's like your community in your hometown or maybe internationally or globally. But for others of you in this room, it also applies to you, and it applies to how you view yourself. For those of you in the second category, I am entirely with you guys. Tonight is one of those nights where quite a few of the things I say, I've either told myself in the past or I'm preaching to myself in this moment. Because what we believe on the inside determines what we do on the outside. So tonight, while I kind of let that main idea settle in, I want to share with you a bit about my life. And I want to tell you about a time when I allowed my inside beliefs about myself to dictate my outward actions. Tonight, when I introduced myself to you guys, I called myself Katie, which actually is my name. Well, it's actually an abbreviation of my name. My real and legal name is actually Catherine Rose. And I don't specifically remember when I realized that I had 2 different names, because you always had like a couple grandparents and stuff like that would call me one name, and then my rest of my family would strictly always call me Katie, and it was honestly confusing, and I probably had an identity crisis every 3 months, but it's fine. I'm here anyway. So when I grew up, I was always called Katie, and I always would correct people and be like, no, my name's Katie, but then there was a moment when I was a teenager when I had to sit down and to decide for myself what name I was going to go by. And I'm a huge, huge, huge lover of knowledge, and I love whatever I can Google or get my hands on. And so I did the only thing that I knew how to do. I Googled to look up to see what the names meant. And I found out that the word Catherine means pure, and that the name Rose is a type of flower, and it signifies things like passion and love and honor and faith. And so these meanings aren't the only factor for why I continue today to choose the name Katie, but as a super, super young teenager, it was enough for me to choose the name Katie. As a young teen, I believed on the inside that the person I wasn't worthy of the name that was written on a piece of paper. I believed on the inside that I lacked things like passion and honor and faith. I believed fundamentally that I wasn't capable of knowing or experiencing love. And slowly, because of the beliefs that I had on the inside, those soon began to dictate my actions on the outside. I grew into my false beliefs and I began shutting myself out from things like love and passion or faith of any form. And what it ended up doing to me personally was stunting my growth and only allowed me to grow into an abbreviated version of myself and not the person that God was growing me into. So it's been many, many years since I chose the name for Katie, and I still go by Katie. But what I've learned is that what's most important isn't the words that I speak or the knowledge that I have or how I correct people about my name. At the end of the day, it's what I believe. At the end of the day, what's most important about me isn't my name. Because on the inside, what I believe about who I am ends up dictating how I act and how I carry myself and how I live my life. Our outside actions being dictated by our inside beliefs are something that's actually can be carried into many aspects of our lives, and especially when it comes to interacting with other people around us as well. So if you say to me that you believe in love, do your actions show that you love others well, or are your words just for show? If you say that you believe that you are a hard worker or that you're dedicated, do you truly apply yourself when it comes to doing homework or listening to your parents or doing that extra sports practice after you lost the game? So maybe you say that you believe that you are content and at peace and that everything in your life is going fine, but maybe your actions end up showing a reflection of worry and anxiety that has rooted itself in your heart. If you say that you believe that you care for others, do you stop when a fellow student maybe drops a few pieces of paper in the hall instead of walking on by and muttering to yourself that maybe you're too busy to stop, or maybe you were going to be late for class anyway? I hope you guys kind of understand where I'm going with this and where I'm taking this, because at the end of the day, our actions are a true reflection of what we believe on the inside. Your actions will show a reflection of those things like love and dedication that you say that you believe, or they will also show a reflection of things like anger, bitterness, or anxiety. Another way our beliefs are reflected is in how we help one another. And then for a lot of us tonight, there's generally like two categories. And on the one category, there's like the people who have like their houses that are destroyed by a natural disaster, like an earthquake or a fire, or there's people that live in Africa that, go to bed hungry each night or don't have access to clean water. Like everybody I feel like we can generally agree that those people, they really, really need our help. And those are on the large scale, and those are things that need to be worked on, and they're needs that need to be met as well. But on a much smaller scale, some of us in this room are the people that need help. And I don't mean that in an insulting way, because we all go through different seasons where we need help or we need to reach out and help a fellow student. So why is it that when we identify a need within ourselves or a fellow student, say like a sibling or a cousin, we decide not to step in and help? Why is it that when we know we need to reach out and ask for help, we end up not asking at all? I mean, how many of us, we've been talking about, if you've been attending church on the weekends, we've been talking about the different windows of opportunities that we have. So why is it that so often when we're given a window of opportunity to smile at somebody or to open a door or pick up a few pieces of papers, why do so many of us just continue walking on by and bypass that opportunity? What is it that keeps us from being motivated to help one another day in and day out all of the time? And the answer is really simple. It's your belief. It's what you believe about others and about yourself. And here's why that is. Because what we believe on the inside determines what we do on the outside. So if it's as simple as our beliefs, then why is being constantly motivated to help others or to seek help for ourselves so difficult? And there's a couple of ideas that I want to share with you guys on why. And the first is that we're unaffected. We think that maybe their problem doesn't directly affect our lives, so why should we even bother? Or we're maybe so, on the other end, if you're the one seeking help, we're so calloused or can become calloused to our own problems, and we close ourselves off that we reach a point where we're not even affected by the own abuse or destruction of relationships that's going on around us. The second one is that maybe we don't think our asking or offering the help will really make a difference. We think to ourselves that it's way too big of a problem to solve, so why should we even start? Or the third is that we're simply too busy living our own lives. If we're so busily shuffling between extracurricular practices and going to church and doing all of these things, then how am I even going to find time to go out and help and meet the needs of others? Or we think to ourselves that everyone around me looks so busy, and I'm just going to be a burden to them if I ask for help. But if we're honest, at the end of the day, many of us aren't just that motivated. And remaining stuck in the same rhythm for the lives that we've created is super comfortable. And I'm a person who loves comfort, and that's honestly what keeps me from changing a lot of the times, is that we get comfortable. And we think to ourselves, maybe it'll be weird, or maybe if we reach out and help somebody else, it'll make our lives a sticky, gooey mess, and we don't like that. We like clean and cut, and we like our lives to be the way that they are. But what if we actually had the wrong motivation to begin with? What if it wasn't about being unaffected or things like that? So for many of us, when we do reach out and help, or if you look around, there's a couple of key reasons that we can identify that are faulty motivations for helping someone else in need. And the first is that we feel guilty. But when guilt is your motivation, slowly you're going to feel tired and be dragged down by that feeling of guilt time and time again, and slowly you're going to stop feeling it at all. The second is that maybe you want recognition, which I honestly get. Like in a day and age where like social media is huge, like Instagram likes and compliments feel super, super great. Like I'm not denying that. But after a while, they're not going to be enough to continually keep you motivated day in and day out. Or maybe you're in the category where you don't have any motivation at all. You have a super, super hard time thinking that the world could be a better place in any area. You have a hard time imagining that the pain or the suffering or the beliefs that you even believe about yourself could change, be different, or get any better. And in both cases, it's much easier for you to ignore the pain, which is a personal favorite of mine. I love to ignore pain all day long. So you think to yourself, maybe it would just be easier to ignore the pain than to deal with the inconvenience of doing anything at all. But ultimately, it's important to figure out what motivates each and every one of us on the individual level, because it will always determine how we respond. What we believe on the inside determines what we do on the outside. And in case you're a lover of knowledge like me, here's the reason why. Because our inside beliefs are dictated by motivation, which in turn determines our outside actions. So if our actions are dictated by our motivations, what if instead of being motivated by the wrong things, we look to God and we're motivated by the same things that motivate Him? Because tonight I'm just not here to identify like what we're doing wrong. I want to also take this opportunity to point you guys to the truth and try and give you some key things that you can work through in your life as well. So today we're going to be looking at a couple of verses from the book of Isaiah. And the book of Isaiah, it's found in the Old Testament, and it's a part of a group of writings called prophecies. And prophecies, I don't know about you guys, sometimes I get super, super confused by prophecies because sometimes there's like a burning bush and sometimes there's not. It just gets really confusing. So prophecies, to simplify it for you guys, God would speak to a prophet. So you would have Isaiah, or there's a number of other prophets in the Bible, but God would speak to a prophet, and then that prophet would then go and tell the people exactly what God wanted them to hear. So that's basically the entire book of Isaiah summed up. Is that it's a book filled with messages that God had for His people. And at the very beginning of the book, in the first chapter, we find something that has to do with our motivation. Isaiah starts off with the bad news. He starts off by telling them that many of their issues have to deal with how they are treating one another. The Israelites, they were doing all of the religious things correctly. They were going to the temple, they were praying, they were checking all of the right religious boxes. But there was still something that was missing. And although they were motivated to worship God religiously, they were still ignoring the real needs of the people around them. The people in the Israelites community, they were still hungry, they were dying, and they were being taken advantage of. And the majority of the Israelites weren't motivated to do anything about it. But the thing is that even though the people weren't motivated to do anything about it, God was still motivated to do something about it. He was not okay with the way the Israelites were living their lives. And God gave them some really, really clear instructions. So through Isaiah, God says this in Isaiah chapter 1, verse 16. He says, "Wash yourselves and be clean. Get your sins out of my sight and give up your evil ways." Immediately, this should give you an indication of how upset God was. The Israelites, like I said, they were doing all of the right religious things, but God was basically telling them, you're missing the point. You don't spend all of your time at the temple trying to make me happy. Leave and start taking care of the people around you. He wants them to understand that the life he designed for them is so much more than being motivated by religion or guilt or recognition. It's about something bigger and better. So what is it that God cares about so much? Isaiah in the next verse says this. Isaiah says, "Learn to do good, seek justice, help the oppressed, defend the cause of the orphans, fight for the right of the widows." So out of all the ways that God could have instructed the Israelites to live, he tells them to care for those who need it most. God didn't go out and tell them, hey, I want you to start going to the temple more, or pray a little bit longer, or worship a little bit louder. What God wanted them to do had so much more. He wanted to include them and involve their daily lives to help meet the needs of the people around them. The Israelites were like many of us. They're super, super great at having it together on the outside, which is the image that so many of us love to portray. But God wasn't impressed with what they were doing. He wanted their hearts. He wanted them to be motivated and to care for the people that he cares about. But he didn't do it by trying to guilt them or shame them into helping. He didn't tell them that simply if they worked harder or tried a little longer, that things would work out for them. He simply told them that the right way for them to live was to meet the needs of the people around them. And we are to follow God and live out his purposes by caring for what he cares about. And God cares incredibly. It's hard to describe almost, because once you experience it, it's hard to explain to other people, but God cares so much about meeting the needs inside of you and using other people to help reach those needs in you and to the other people in our communities. So when we pay attention to that, and I'm going to stop and go off a little quick tangent for a second, because it's super, super easy to be told about what God cares about and things like that, but I don't want you guys to simply take my word for it. Just because I stand up here and tell you that God cares about the needs of the people, I want to encourage you and challenge you guys tonight to go out and seek for yourselves, to pray and ask God what he cares about. Ask him what his heart longs to do and accomplish in our community. And I promise you that when you ask and you pray and you ask God those big questions, that he will show up in some really crazy and insane ways in your life. So I really challenge you guys to try and do that this week. Because when we pay attention to the things that God cares about, it pulls us into such a larger and bigger story. It draws us towards a life of more purpose than we could ever even create or imagine on our own. Because our inside motivation determines our outside actions. And when our motivation comes from a desire to partner with God, because that's what it is, it's a partnership with God, with us, and with God to meet the needs of the people. When we partner with God in the work that he's doing around us, we'll be able to start working with this new type of motivation that I'm discussing. And with that motivation, we'll not only be able to better care for ourselves, but also the people around us. Because the motivation within us should be determined by how God sees us as his children and how he also views the world around us. And when that happens, our actions will start looking a little bit less like us and a little bit more like Christ. So I wanted to end on that note, because in small groups, There's a lot to dive in and go through in that, and so I really hope that in small groups tonight you guys have some opportunity to look at the action steps and see how that would look like for you guys and for you on the individual level, but also in the communities that you're in.